and welcome to the Burnham podcast. This is our Independence Day episode. I say ours. I'm the only one here today. My brother slash co-host Drew Burnham is tied up with holiday festivities. He and his wife right now are actually on their way to the Peachtree Road Race Expo, I think is what it's officially titled. Christina, Drew's wife, and my wife Jessica are running in the Peachtree Road Race tomorrow. That's becoming a Burnham family tradition of sorts. I'm in the 5Ks right now, but I'm not so much into the 10K yet. But it's a big deal, and we like going. I'm Danny Burnham, editor of Fire Christian Media and host of Burnham Podcast. I guess I should have introduced myself right off the bat. I've already mentioned today's show is about Independence Day and some of we're going to do some, not trivia, I guess, but we're going to talk about a few things pertaining to America and its origins and things like that. But first, I need to plug the sponsor. God bless them. Mustard Seed Soap Company. Mustard Seed Soap Company is an online retailer specializing in handmade soaps and bath products produced in small batches with the finest natural ingredients. They make handmade soaps, sugar scrubs, lip balms, bath bombs, potty sprays, pillow sprays, bath teas, and bath soaks. Now, that sounds, like girly, soapy, smelly, goody bathroom type stuff, but they've got a line of stuff for men too, guys. So, and if you can't find anything that you like in there, then surely you can find something for your wife. Go, they're on Facebook, hit them up there, mustardseedsoap.com. They will actually be at the Chapel Hill United Methodist Church Arts and Crafts Festival on July the 7th. That's at 1818 Kingston Road if you're in the Rome, Georgia area, or if you're in the 40 miles around there, come see them anyway. But that's July 7th, this coming Saturday. They do a lot of festivals and things like that. That's where we usually catch them and buy things from. Great stuff. Makes my entire house smell better. We love them. And we're very grateful for their sponsorship. And you should be too. So make sure you spend some money with those guys. Follow them on Facebook. They're on Instagram. Hit them up. You can find them. Great people. Good stuff. So we asked a question the other day on social media. What does Independence Day mean to you? And what are some of the traditions you observed? And we got everything from I like to watch the fireworks all the way to my brother Sam. He reads the Declaration of every Independence every year on the 4th. And someone else said, my buddy Kirk says it's a great day to revisit some Schoolhouse Rock. There's some good stories in there about the birth of the nation and things like that. Skip Saunders, who is a phenomenal teacher, incredible teacher. Other teachers that I work with won't mind me saying that Skip's the best teacher that most of us have ever worked with. Incredible next level thinker. But Skip responds in a way that I wasn't looking for. I was looking for hot dogs and barbecue and fireworks and things like that. But Skip says, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And he says that now the truths that Jefferson lists patently are not self-evident. That's the daring journey of faith we began. We don't agree that these are truths, but we're going to hold them to be so anyway because we're agreeing to act as though they are truths is the only thing distinguishing us from the nations before us and the only way we'll make it. When we stop trying to act as if it is true, we stop being us. Now to read that a few times because that's some next level thinking going on, and it's getting into some stuff that I've never thought about. Independence Day is a big deal to me, and I'm getting text messages in the middle of the show. But Independence Day is a big deal to me, and we spend a lot of time on our show, saluting military and things like that. But what Skip's talking about here, and I could be missing the boat, but what I get out of this is that we look at the Declaration and we think about all men being created equal, and those guys probably did not actually believe that. Number one, they didn't see their slaves even as people at the time, and that's an ugly truth, that we have to find a way to address in our country. But even that aside from the origins of the country, they're looking at a king and a ruling class that ruled over them. They obviously had slaves and things like that. Some of them did. And then there was a ruling class, the King of England and people like that are over their heads. So we're obviously not equal. But we have to act as though we are. These guys had to put themselves on equal footing with the king and say, hey, we're important too, and we need to have say-so. And all they were trying to get initially was representation in Parliament, to be able to, the colonies to have some say-so and some taxes and things that were levied against them. But in order to do that, they had to be on the same level as everybody else in England, even, the king himself. We need to have some say-so in this. So they knew they weren't actually equal at the time, but they had to see themselves as though they were. And we've got to see each other as though we were. And that, you look at that, and it goes back to one of the most fundamental truths of the gospel, in that, we're supposed to love our neighbor as Christ loved us and as he loves the church. So we've got to see each other as equals. All men are created equal as far as that goes. And so we don't know who follows Jesus, who believes in Jesus, and who doesn't. That doesn't matter. We don't have that caveat is not on that commandment. We're just supposed to love our neighbor regardless. And we see that, from the very foundations of our country, is that we're all equal in the eyes of God as far as that goes. So again, that's a way that I've never thought about Independence Day before. But when these guys declared independence, that's essentially what they were doing. King George, we're on the same plane as you. And, we're going to start getting some respect around here, or we're going to start shooting. And, we know how that story ended. But just a couple of other things I wanted to go over. The Declaration of Independence itself. We celebrate the 4th of July as Independence Day. In fact, independence was formally declared on July the 2nd. John Adams said this would be the most memorable epoch, somebody's going to correct me on that, in the history of America, a big day. It's going to be the biggest day in the history of America. John Adams was wrong. It was the 4th. It was a couple of days later. It's the one that we celebrate. The 4th is the day they approved the final text of the Declaration, and they didn't actually even sign it until August the 2nd. But the fact that they adopted it and approved it, the 4th, is why we celebrate the way that we do now. The Star Spangled Banner is another thing that I wanted to touch on. The song, it's our national anthem, and it's a song that we always sing before ball games and when somebody's getting a medal in the Olympics, and it's a big deal, and it's in the news a lot right now. And whichever side of that you're on, God bless you. It's our national anthem. Just some facts about it. We all assume. I always, assumed up until I learned better that the Star Spangled Banner went like hand in hand with the Declaration of Independence. And they were probably written about the same time. And, they weren't, though. They were not. The Declaration of Independence was written during the War of 1812. It was actually the year 1814. I don't know why they didn't call that war some other name, the War of 1812. It lasted longer than that. But Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner based on what he saw during the Battle of Fort McHenry, which is in Baltimore during 1814. He was looking at this 15-star, 15-stripe garrison flag that was flying on a 90-foot flagpole. And this particular battle of the Star Spangled Banner has a lot to do with the way that we celebrate the 4th of July now, the Independence Day, with our fireworks and things like that. And he's watching this going on over his head, all these explosions and smoke and fire and, all the things that go along with battle. But the flag was still there, when all the shooting had stopped. So that's the basis for the Star Spangled Banner. And if I'm not going to read them all, but I challenge you to look up the lyrics to the Star Spangled Banner. Because we got the one verse that we sing, before the ball games, and if you're a true red-blooded American, man, it gets your heart pumping, and it's inspiring, and it's it's what we feel like, it's our national anthem. It's, it speaks for itself. But if you get into some of the other verses of Star Spangled Banner, it gets very graphic in its description of battle, what battle was back then. We think about the guys used to line up, shoot at each other, and it was kind of dumb. I don't know anybody ever thought that was a good idea, but that was all, that was the basis that we had as far as our image of battle, was that it was just this linear, clean, you shoot at me and I shoot at you and we back up and you back up and we kind of push back and forth. But even then, battle was a gruesome, gory thing. We don't always think that compared to the battle, the combat that we see these days. But then they didn't have the medicine that we have now, and their weapons were. It was an up close and personal thing. The long range, the rifles weren't even rifles mostly. They had a smooth bore that shot a little projectile out of it because you created an explosion about 2 inches from your face. And then they weren't very accurate because they weren't rifled. And then they had these triangular shaped bayonets on the end that did way more damage than just a regular knife would do when you stick it in somebody. And, it's describing all these things. And I forget if it's the second or third verse. The Star Spangled Banner has several verses, but it talks about we won't even know they were here because their own blood will wash away their footprints, and nobody will ever even know that the redcoats were here. And it's not this, little cute thing that we do just before ball games. Like it tells the story of battle, of combat, of what these guys were seeing then, and what a lot of our guys see now. When they're overseas and they're deployed and they're fighting whichever group they're fighting these days. But it captures the horrors of war, and it's very graphic in doing so in a couple of places. But I challenge you to look that up and dig into that just a little bit. There's a great video of a guy singing the Star Spangled Banner, and I couldn't tell you when or where, but it was a minor league baseball game, and he sings the first verse like we always do at these ball games. Then everybody starts to sit down, and then he keeps singing. He's singing the second verse, and he sings like every verse. People are about to sit down at the end of every verse, and he starts singing. They stand back up. It's great, and that's a little bit on the humorous end. But again, I look that up, read it. It's awesome. It's good stuff. It gives you a better perspective on what those guys were looking at way back then. As far as what the day means to me and what I think it should mean to other people, the first thing I think of when I think of independence is our freedom to worship. And, I like all of them. I look at the Bill of Rights all now. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty much in favor of all those things. I'm practicing the first right now, and I'm a big, I practice the second on a regular basis. I got guns and we shoot and hunt and do all those things. And the third, fourth, fifth, I'm with it, man. Those are all good. But I think about our freedom to worship that we have in this country. And just yesterday, the day before, there was an Anglican priest in Africa who was attacked by cattle rustlers. They laid siege to his house and destroyed the guy's house. And there was a bunch of orphans at the place, and and it was awful. It was just a terrible thing. And that doesn't happen here. Those guys are not going to be punished. They just rode off into the sunset and they're gone because they don't live in a country that can enforce laws. Their government's not strong enough to track these guys down, or maybe they just don't care. We look at a country like Mexico and the corruption they've got going on, and that's not always necessarily tied to religion, but the guy in Africa was. But the point was there's just some countries that can't or won't do anything about, warlords and people like that just do whatever they want, whether it's to the average civilian or to a priest or a religious figure. But those things don't happen here. And if they do happen here, the police find those people and punish them. And that's the country that we live in. We can go to a church, a house of worship on Sundays and sing songs and listen to the preacher preach, or you can listen to a podcast and I can tell you the gospel, or you can have your own podcast and share the gospel. There's all kinds of ways now to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it's, unrestricted. We can do it in all kinds of ways. We can, it used to be you stand out on the street corner, but now we've got 1,000 followers on Twitter, so we just go live on Periscope and everybody hears what we've got to say, or Facebook or whatever. But there are countries in the world that don't have that. There are countries where people meet in basements, in caves, and out in the wilderness. And there's places that don't have the freedom that we have to just assemble. They have to hide it. They have to sneak around. And it's not that they're ashamed of the gospel. It's not, they'll get killed if they try to assemble in a public place. The government will round them up and chop all their heads off, or have them arrested, and they'll be tortured, and all these things. And there's not a verse in the Bible that says you have to subject yourself to being beheaded. Like, if it happens, we all know where we're going, and but I'd rather not if we don't have to, just so. But it's got to start somewhere. The early church, we see the early church meeting. A lot of those guys met in secret because they knew that if they got caught, the Romans would punish them, and they'd end up, in bad shape themselves. But that's the difference between our country and a lot of other countries. There's other countries you can worship relatively freely, but we're one of the very few that you can just you put your worship on the World Wide Web via Facebook Live if you want to, and you can spread your message that way. But that's what it means to me, and I hope that's sort of what it means to you also. I hope that's not something that we've taken for granted. I think we have to some degree, and I think that's part of the reason that our country is in the shape that it's in, is because we have kind of gone private with our worship when we didn't really have to. Nobody made us do that. We just got sheepish about it, and we've kept going down that rabbit hole. And so, church has become this secret society in a lot of ways, and that wasn't necessary. We didn't have to do that. So let's live it out. We're able, we can. There's no law against sharing the gospel. We can do it old school and stand on the street corner and yell at people. I don't know how well that works, but fighting with people on Facebook doesn't work either. There's a way to do it without, being a jerk and turning people off of the gospel. But the opportunities are literally limitless at this point in our country with the technology that we have and things like that. Your church, if they have Facebook Live, there's probably 1,000 people watching that thing. In addition to the people that you have there in the sanctuary. And pastors don't worry about this now, because I've talked to a couple of pastor friends, and they say that since their Facebook Live viewership has gone up, their giving has gone up as well. So people will give where they're blessed. So give them the opportunity to do that. Whatever you gotta do, set up a PayPal or give them an address during your sermon to send a check, like whatever. People do that. It's a real thing. So don't worry about losing people because you're going live on Facebook. You don't have to sweat that. God takes care of you anyway, man. As long as you're faithful, He's going to hold up His end of the deal. We can't give more than He can. That's what I heard an old pastor say one time. You can't outgive God. And that's true. That's true. But that's what I've got, and I'm probably going to kick myself in a few minutes and think of something that I've meant to share with you guys. But I wanted to impart a little bit of Independence Day trivia on that. Was another thing I was going to mention today. We don't wish people happy fourth Thursday of November. We don't say happy December 25th, happy January 1st. It makes it more special when you call it what it is. When you say Merry Christmas to somebody, it's a big deal. When you say Happy Independence Day to somebody, it's a big deal. Happy July the 4th. I mean, whatever. Maybe I'm being a stickler for details here, but I'd encourage you to call it Independence Day. Happy Independence Day. So when you're out and about celebrating our nation's freedom, number one, take care of your thumbs and your eyebrows. Don't blow yourself up. And number two, remember Independence Day. And remember that we have it because brave men fought and died so that we could make podcasts and carry guns and do all the things that we enjoy doing as Americans, and having free speech and doing all these things. But just remember why it is that we're barbecuing, why it is that we're shooting fireworks and and find a place in your heart that's grateful for those things and grateful to God that He would put us in a country where we can celebrate those freedoms, where we had such men who were willing to fight and die in an effort to gain freedom from a tyrannical dictator, and it set up such a government that we 200 years later are still enjoying a lot of those same freedoms. But thank you guys for listening today, and be safe with your fireworks, and happy Independence Day. God bless you guys.